Okay, in this video, we're going to be going over the multi-delivery tool. Of course, this is for the same, drone delivery kind of flight application here, but you can use it for a couple other things too if you want to be creative. But as you can see, very similar layout. There's a few differences here though. Of course, you have the instructions that are updated to show the differences for this tool. But then of course you have the starting coordinates, which is your takeoff location. But then you want to see here that you don't just have an end or a landing location. You have an add delivery coordinates. Now, this being a multi-delivery tool, it is meant so that you can deliver from just A to B. More than that, you can deliver from A to B, B to C, and so forth. You get the idea. Of course, we have the same tools like selecting the aircraft type here, multi-copter, helicopter, fixed wing, or VTOL fixed wing hybrid. Of course, depending on the one you select, it will change the takeoff and landings as well as the behavior at the delivery locations. So for now, we'll just go ahead and switch it to multi-copter helicopter and then above terrain. For our flight route, we want to set it to about 200 feet. Now, of course, this is just an example. You can set it to anything you want. Now, just be aware though, this does not account for potential obstacles that may be higher than the terrain that includes trees and buildings. So if you want to make sure you're being safe at a safe altitude, make sure that you're using or understanding the possible altitudes of obstacles around the area that you'll be flying in. So we've set our altitude above terrain to 200 feet, understanding that where we're flying at, there's going to be some houses and there's going to be probably some buildings, but none taller than 200 feet. 200 feet is a pretty safe altitude for most of your residential suburban style areas. But if you're flying in a highly metropolitan area, you want to double check your altitudes and maybe just set it to higher just to be safer. Now, waypoint intervals, of course, we can change these from meters to feet, and we can go ahead and set that for 500. So that we make sure every 500 feet we have the most accurate terrain elevation changes for our waypoints. But if you're dealing with a location that has more, what you may see as a more rapid elevation change, you may want to shorten that waypoint interval. Now, as you shorten the waypoint interval, it takes longer to process the flight plan because it has to query the terrain for each waypoint that it does. But it's still better than risking and potentially having your aircraft crash into terrain. All right, geofence buffer, we'll set that to 200 feet. And then our final action, we can either again land at the final delivery location, because since we're doing multiple deliveries, it may take more and more battery, and we may just have a tri-area logistics point where we have 3 points of delivery and takeoff, where each location has a ground support setup that allows us to recharge or refuel the aircraft or store the aircraft as needed. But we also have the return to takeoff location. So we'll just set that as the definite. Now, let's go ahead and select our takeoff point. We'll just go ahead and use the same location as we've been for all these tools. And we'll go ahead and get our GPS coordinates. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start adding different delivery locations. So let's go ahead and follow along this river route, and we'll go ahead and make a delivery to this location here. Let's see if there's an office building. It's pretty close enough. Let's go ahead and get that. But now instead, since this is going to be our first delivery location, we're going to add the delivery coordinates here. And we'll go ahead and select add delivery point. It'll add the delivery coordinates to here, and then we can go ahead and find our next delivery location. So let's say our next delivery location is going to be over here, next to this location here. We'll go ahead and have it deliver in the parking lot. Control C, Control V. We'll add the delivery point. And of course, you can keep repeating this. Now again, I just want to make sure that you understand that this does not account for the limitations of your aircraft and its battery. In the future, we'll add additional tools to this software that allows you to input some of your aircraft parameters as well as the expected flight time and it will auto-calculate the expected flight time depending on the cruise speed set in your parameter files. But then again, for now, you will need to do the calculations yourself and make sure that your aircraft can make the flight distance. All right, let's go ahead now that we have our delivery coordinates and our takeoff coordinates, and we also have our other parameters set. Go ahead and generate the .plan file. Now again, this may take some time, so be patient while it generates the plan. All right, so now that it's all set, we'll call the multi-delivery. That way we can differentiate between the tools here. Once we've saved it, we can go ahead and view the altitude profile. And then once we've saved it, we can go ahead and open up Q ground control. And now let's go ahead and zoom out. This is from our older plans that we created for the delivery flight route. Now I'll show you the multi-delivery one. So we'll go ahead and open up our multi-delivery plan. Give it some time to load. This may take some time due to the intensity I'm running on my computer right now. All right, so as you can see here, it's created a triangular flight path. So what does that mean and why does it show up that way? Well, it shows up that way because you have your flight plan set to return to the takeoff location. So at the end of its deliveries, it would return and fly back home to where it started its flight from. Now, as you can see throughout the flight plan here, orangish yellow is our flight altitude and the green is the terrain elevation. That terrain elevation does increase as we're going from a lower river point to a higher elevation point here, which is more of that hill along the river, if you will. And then it decreases back as it begins to go back home. And we can click on each of these and we can see that highlight happen. Now, this, of course, you're probably wondering, okay, how does it handle the deliveries? Well, let's go to our delivery location. First, it'll get there at the cruise altitude so that it stays above all potential obstacles that are along the flight route until it gets to the delivery point. Then, sorry, let me go back. Different waypoint because these waypoints are stacked very close together at the same location. As you can see, essentially right on top of each other. It'll stay at that altitude as I stated earlier. It'll loiter and go down to 20 feet above the terrain elevation at that location. This is assuming that your aircraft has a lowering mechanism or a drop mechanism, and it controls that gripper mechanism to release. Of course, feel free to change this. This flight plan is editable, so you can change this to whatever you need. You can set a servo, do as you wish in order to make sure that your delivery mechanism works. In the future, we also will have the ability to set it so that you can just land at these locations as well. With that being said, that is the return to home for a multi-delivery point, but I also want to demonstrate to you if we were to tell it to land at the final delivery location. So I'm going to open back up our tool. I'm going to tell it, nah, you know what? With my flight time, I can't really make it back to the takeoff location. Good news is that the place I'm landing at has the ability to store and recharge the aircraft while the equipment and tools need it. So we'll go ahead and tell it to land at the final delivery location, and we'll tell it to generate that flight plan. Of course, we'll give it time to generate that plan. It should take a little bit less time now due to the factor that it doesn't have to plot all the waypoints going back to our takeoff location. Okay, now that the new plan has been generated without the return to takeoff location, we'll go ahead and open up our updated flight plan. Give it some time to load. Computer's running a lot in the background right now, therefore it's probably showing up a little bit slower on my screen right now. And there we go. As you can see, there's no more triangle geofence created as a result of this. We do have just the geofence with a large buffer surrounding the takeoff and landing location, and the geofence follows all the way through from takeoff to landing, and then it just doesn't add that additional buffer for the middle delivery location. Now, of course, this is just something that we can make changes to, you can further edit to when we release future versions of the program, but for now the base function works. Alright, that's it for this video, and that is the multi-delivery tool.